Hey there guys, welcome back to the channel. Today I want to do a more casual video where we look at just the coloured lands that you can use in Commander. I will admit, this video got far away from me. I'm like, yeah, a couple groups of families, you know, like scientific families, kingdom, phylum, species, whatnot. It went big. I forgot how many good groups there are. So I've grouped what I think are the main ones you can use in Commander and a couple random ones at the end. So if you haven't seen any of these before, maybe you can use them. So first up are the dual lands. These are the most expensive way to get multicolor in your land base. You are $300 to $1,000 a card. Only people with the biggest Chad Thundercocks play with these cards. I personally don't play them anymore in my Commander decks. I took them out because I felt like I had too much value in one card. I was just flexing for the sake of nothing. When you see these cards, you will see though that you're comparing speed versus flexibility. That's what determines a land's value pretty much. These are both card types at the same time, so they can be an island and a swamp. Therefore, a land that, or an effect that can search for a land that has either of those types can get this, and they enter untapped. Most other cards that have those two types enter tapped, which slows them down. But these have flexibility and speed, hence why they're the best lands in the game and reserve list. Again, absolute chads play with these cards. So still in the Chad tier, or if you're a real competitive commander, fetch lands. Again, I personally have taken a lot of my fetch lands out of my commander decks because I don't like having so much money just in a land slot. And I feel, yeah, it's helpful, but is it really that helpful for $50, $60? Not really. Again, you've got another 10 fetch lands for every possible color combination in your two pairings. They are good, and hey, if you picked them up a while ago when they're a lot cheaper, they're not a bad option in commander. You get those landfall triggers, are real good. To note, there are a thing called slow fetch lands, originally from Mirage. They are only $2 to $3 each. They search for a land of either type. There's only 5 of them, but they enter tapped, hence they're slow lands. Honestly, for $2 to $3, they're a pretty good option, like a budget version of a fetch land. And speaking of your fetch lands, you have your Shocklands, the best pairing to go with them. Shocklands were pretty much the OG dual types that most people played with, not excluding the Chad Thundercock ones. They were cheap, they're affordable, they were printed pretty hard in 3 sets. You got 10 pairings for your 2 color combinations. They have always 2 types in them, which if you search them, away you go. They're called Shocklands because you can pay 2 life to have them enter untapped, hence Shock, because that's how much damage Shock would do to you. They are great commander. Like I said, $10 to $30 at most for them. Sometimes I put them on my decks, sometimes I don't. It depends if I feel like I need a better land base or if I can fetch them out. Again, you're putting a good chunk of money into one land that's not going to improve your deck that much. Now the cycle lands, these are more common in Commander because we're entering the lower price point. These were from Amonkhet. They were 2 types of colour. They had the keyword so you could search for them, but they entered tapped. But as a trade-off entering tapped, you could cycle them. So if you're mid-late game, you don't need the land, you can just ditch it from your hand and try and draw another card. Gave you flexibility, which in Commander I think is great. I would rather have flexibility over speed personally in Commander because I'm not playing competitive Commander as much these days. I want to have more fun, more casual with my friends. But you had the Triumph series from Ikoria. They had 3 land types. First time in Magic, I believe, where you have actually 3 fetchable keywords on the land itself. Of course, the 3 colors too. They also have cycling, but cycling at 3. Again, if you're late game, you've got tons of mana, just ditch it, draw a card. But as well as the downside, they enter tapped. But they are very powerful. Again, about, I think, $6 to $15, depending which one you go. Good price point for Commander, for a good land. Your Battleborn Lands, or just commonly referred to Bond Lands, these are ones that enter untapped if you have 2 or more opponents. Most people play Commander games in games of 3 to 4 players, that's rather common. So the downside is they don't really do you much good in 1v1, but anything else, you're laughing. Price point I think is anywhere $10 to $30 on these. They do pretty good, because in most games you're going to enter untapped, they give you 2 colors right then and there, they're very fast. The downside is you can't fetch them. So they're a little bit more limited in terms of flexibility, but they are great options. Now your OG fast lands, these guys are great in 1v1 Commander, and hence I see a lot of play Modern because of that competitive nature. They enter untapped if you have 2 or fewer lands when they come into play. So long as you're a couple first drops, you're laughing. Again, all 10 colors, very quick, very aggressive, very speedy. Downside is no flexibility because you can't search them with any keywords there. For the longest time when they didn't have the set complete from Kaladesh, the original ones were from, I think, Scars of Mirrodin. They were expensive. Blackleaf Cliffs was like nearly a $60 land. Oh. Now your Horizon lands, these are kind of a weird thing that took off from Horizon Canopy, from original Future Sight, was it? So Horizon lands were lands that you could pay 1 life to get 2 colours. You're always going to have to pay a life, unfortunately. But you can pay 1 mana, tap the land, and sack it out to draw a card later on. It gave you card draw in a land slot. So mid-late game, you've got enough land on the board to keep you going. Sack out the land, draw a card. It gave you just so much advantage, especially in the white-green winnie decks in Modern where it really established itself. But in terms of commander, it brings land draw, I should say, just draw into colours that don't really get it too much or they have to work for it. So you've got the white-black, which really do benefit from it. Red-white benefit really strongly there too. The other colours here can draw pretty well. So Fiery Islet being the cheapest one, who knew? The filter lands. These are pretty interesting lands where you can tap for generic, or you can feed 1 colour of the respective colours of that land into it to generate 2 of double pairing or both. Great option as long as they're not your first land, pretty much, because you need colour to filter into them. They range from anywhere about $10 to $20. They used to be really expensive, but they're good for more casual commander. Only hard thing is you remember, have I got the right colour to feed into it? That's the only real downside to them. They work in most commander decks. The good old budget pain lands. These guys are pretty much talismans. They work fine for most commander decks. There's no real downside to them. They can tap for generic, or if you can pay the life, you can get 1 of your 2 colours. They're very cheap, anywhere for like $1 to $2 on the front pairing here. For some reason, they do not want to print the back pairings, like your river, your forest, your springs, your waste, your brushland. They just don't want to print them. They're about $10 a land. But hey, nice budget friendly lands, easier to get. Downside is you can't fetch for them, but they have got good flexibility. The check lands, or I like to call buddy lands, they enter battlefield untapped as long as you control one of the other pairings of that said land. So for example, Untitled Chapter, if you have a plains or swamp, untapped. So they can be pretty fast too. Work great with your Shocklands, your Trilands, things like that, have those multiple key land types, because it makes these all the better. Downside is they can enter tapped, and you can't search them by any means with the keywords. But again, the cheaper lands, you're about, I think $2 to $3 on the cheap end, up to about 10. Tribal lands. So originally from Laurelwind or Morningtide, depending which set you look at, you got a couple here for your more generic save tribes, and you got a Treefolk and a general purpose elemental one here. So you've got the Merfolk, you've got elves, goblins, fairies, and giants. The 2 at the end there are worth the least because you don't really see fairy and giant as a really big thing, but Merfolk, goblin, and elf are huge tribes. So with these tribal lands, you reveal the said creature type from your hand, the land enters the battlefield untapped. Very strong. Now the Treefolk one's a little bit different because it's actually got the land type forest. So any effect that could let you search a forest, you can get this one. It enters the battlefield untapped if you're a Treefolk, but you can also pay, or deal 1 damage to yourself, to generate white or black. It's a very unique land, really only good for the Treefolk deck for Doran, is it? I forget his name, yeah, Doran. Or you got Primal Bounty. Similar effect, just any colour for elementals, reveal an elemental untapped. Just a very powerful land for that tribal deck. And you'll be amazed how many commanders are actually elemental. Maybe the elemental is just subtype of your commander. Just check, because it might be a good land for you to run. The reveal lands. These came from, I believe, Shadows over Innistrad, and they got recently finished off in Strixhaven. They're not the most valuable lands, they're about $2 to $3, but the idea is you want to play them, they enter battlefield untapped if you reveal one of the lands of that said type, so a swamp or a forest. So if you've got multiple lands in your hand, they're a little bit better, a little bit quicker. Again, budget, they do work for most general commander decks that are blowing the bank. I think the lairs are very underrated. So they're a tricolor land. There's only 5 of them for the Elder Dragons, but they enter battlefield. You have to bounce back a non-lair back to your hand. Pretty much like the dragon moving in, establishing a lair. But hey, it's another land that can produce 3 types, and it enters battlefield untapped. You really can't go wrong there. I love my temples and commander. They're nice, they're cheap, they give me scry effects, and they can produce 2 colours. They give me great flexibility, they're just not very speedy, that's the only thing. But again, in non-competitive environments, they are great. Honestly, any deck should be running the temples that they can, especially your decks that don't really touch blue. Maybe red-green decks definitely need that scry to help get lands off the top of the deck they don't want there. Can't recommend the temples enough for how much they cost. The good old Trilands. So these are originally called Shardlands, but I continued them off with Khans. So pretty much just 10 it all up. They produce 1 of 3 colours, they enter tapped. Actually, a couple of them are worth a few dollars. We're talking $1 to $2, not much though. But they're just a good backbone in decks. Getting you 3 colours. If you're on a tricolor decks, 4 or 5 color decks, they are the way to go. The good old bounce lands. The idea of these work are they produce 2 mana at the same time, one of each of your colours, then battlefield tapped, but you have to bounce back a land you already control back to your hand. I feel like these used to see a lot more play when I first started playing Magic many years ago. I feel old, but I feel like you don't see them as much anymore. Probably because land destruction really makes you cry. For example, you bounce back a land to your hand to play this and then it gets blown up. You've lost 3 land production basically in a sense. You don't see them as much, but some of the landfall decks do still play them, so the white, green and the red, green you do see a little bit more often. Not my personal favourite, I don't put them in any of my decks anymore. The good old budget guild gates. These are literally worthless. I have a box of probably 300-400 of them just sitting there. They are the land type gate, which can come up. There are a couple commons and uncommon stuff from the Ravnica eras that refer to gate cards in particular. They cost nothing, easy way to just get a multicolor land base going. But you can mix them with Maze's End to get a free win. If you have all the 10 guild gates out, if you're in a 5 color deck, you can win the game then and there. Plus, Maze's End is a land that can get more lands out of your library, which is pretty unique like that. All up, budget friendly. Most 5 color decks run them as maybe just a free possible win. You can put effects in your deck like Amulet of Vigor that make your permanent into untapped. Suddenly those gates are doing really well. So other land types to look at. The Thriving Lands. They're from Jumpstart. They are aligned to one colour, and when they're in the battlefield you pick another colour, and they can produce that colour as well. They do have a tap, it's a little bit slow, but they're only commons. They are just adaptive. They can fit any deck. They're not expensive, maybe $1 or $2. I like them. You got the new Snow Dual Land commons from Kaldheim. They are good because you can fetch for them. They don't cost anything. They're like literally worthless because they're a common. The snow could come in handy if you are relevant to snow permanents, but the fact it's a worthless common that can be searched out by a fetch land or something and get you both your colours on. They do have it tapped. That's the only downside. Then you got your Signet Lands. Not as popular, they've kind of died out, not many people play them because they're a little bit more risky. You need 1 generic mana to feed into them to get 2 mana back, and it will always be one colour for each type. So, more restrictive, land destruction sucks. If you don't have mana to feed into them, they're not good, and if it's your first land, you're kind of screwed. There's only 5 of them, they don't see much play anymore. And then you got your life gain lands. So there's actually 15 of these. There's 2 complete cycles for 2 of each colour, and then there's a random half-completed cycle from, I think, Zendikar, the Refuge cycle. So all up, there's 15 dual lands and a tap that gain you life. They're not really worth anything, but they're actually pretty good. They're commons, they don't hurt your budget, they give you 2 colours. If you care about life gain or incremental life gain, they are worth running because that can cause more triggers in your deck. And honestly, a land that gives you 2.5% more life, like, it's not a bad option. And then more recently, you got your flip lands from Zendikar. I'm not the biggest fan of them because I feel like you're locked into one of 2 colours that you have to pick. I'd rather have a land that can be more adaptive at any time I need to produce my 2 colours. I have no idea how this video is going to go. Just wanted to go through some of the lands you can run for Commander, your multicolour lands that is. I'm very biased towards the more lower end for Commander in terms of budget. I don't like spending $20 on a Shockland, then I'm going to run $40 for the fetch land to get that said Shockland. I don't like doing that in my land slot. Yes, it makes your deck far more competitive and flow better, but I like the more budget-friendly options because I could go, that $60 I just spent could be put into maybe 10 key cards for the deck to make it perform overall better. So, my opinion, I like my more lower-end to mid cards, but what do you feel? Do you run the dual lands, the OG ones? Are you Chad Thundercock in your own deck? Let me know, guys. If there's any land cycles I've kind of missed, let me know. I'll admit, this got away from me. There's a lot of lands to cover. I try to cover things that are more complete, like families or cycles. There's lots of just random, just dual lands that produce 2 or more colours. But there's a lot of storage lands, a lot of jank. But I've tried to leave them to the side because they are not really that played as much. But if there's anything I missed that you think should be on here, let me know, guys. And have a good one. Ta-ta. Thanks for watching the video, guys. If you enjoyed it, give the video a like, helps out the channel a lot. If you found any lands here that are helpful for you or you didn't really remember or think about, let us know down below if they were any help to you. Please consider subbing. We are getting close to 4,000. Inflate my ego more because I need that, don't I? To my patrons, I cannot thank you guys enough. You mean the world to me. You are the ones inflating my ego the most. You help me do my little hobby and support this channel more than anyone else. I cannot thank you guys enough.